This tank could do with some TLC. Sue's asking me for me to work on this tank. I can't. It's so stable. It's quite a young tank. It's less than 6 months old. Let's say it's 4 months old since I put it into play. Heavily planted. The plants is doing great. They look overwhelming, but they're not. You can't have too many plants. The frogs are doing great. There's mulm on the surface of the substrate, which is a father fish substrate, by the way. A bed of dirt capped with sand and heavily planted, and the plants are doing great. The occupants are Rasbora, 3 kinds: the red, the chili, and the lime. And we've got some Ember Tetra in there, along with some Nearite snails and some African dwarf frogs, 4 of them. Everyone is still alive, and there are babies, although they're hard to tell or to find because they're not live bearers, they're egg layers. So I'm reluctant to mess with it, although aesthetically pleasing, it's not good to look at. But it is, if you know what the biology of an aquarium is. It is good to look at. It's just not for perfectionists that want, nice shiny substrate and all of that. Well, if you want that, your aquariums aren't going to last long, and neither are the inhabitants. Same goes to say with this old beast of a 50-gallon. It's going to be hard to get it all in because, well, we're still decorating, and it's not quite a year, but it's almost coming up for a year. We've got this beast. The only issue I have with this tank is the lack of light permeating, and that's because of the duckweed. You see, we used to have goldfish in here, along with all these other inhabitants, the guppies, the mollies, the platies, the African dwarf frogs, we love them, the Nearite snails as well, and some bristlenose plecos, although they're not out at the moment. There's one. Hello, mister. That's a mister. We bought 4. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We bought 4 and now we've got 8. They have had offspring, the 2 mating pairs. We've got lots of babies from all of the mollies, the platies and the guppies. I'm just reluctant to mess with it, especially as we've got decorating going on, because if I take this lid off and there's no evaporation, I've not had to do anything with this in months, nearly 6 months now, and I'm reluctant to interfere with it, because if I do, it might become contaminated. So I'm just thinking of just leaving it, and once the worst of the work that we have going on right now, which is the kitchen, I think I'll just leave it. I was going to perform a water change. Why? There's nothing wrong with it, Lee. I was going to cut some of the plants back. Why? There's nothing wrong, Lee. The light is permeating. The plants down below are growing. Yes, there's mulm. It doesn't look too nice on the surface of the substrate, But look how dark the substrate is. And the substrate here was no different from the tank that I showed you earlier. It's just got maturity. And there's microbial bacteria and all sorts going on in there, which is keeping this tank healthy. And the plants are healthy. The inhabitants are healthy. I just banged my head. Everything's healthy. Alright, it looks overgrown and a bit of a mess. But if you put your head underwater, out there in the wild, it's certainly not something that Pixar would show on one of their films. Because in a Pixar film, everything has to be clean and pure, and that's not what it is. Clean and pure sometimes means it doesn't look that way, but in fact it is. I haven't touched this aquarium in months upon months and months, and everything is fine. Let's get back to the younger aquarium. Same goes with this. It looks the same. Father Fish, Sir Lewis Foxwell. I was listening. I do listen. And when I make fun about I'm going to stick my hands in and pluck things out, and you say, no, mercy Lee, don't do it. I don't. Because you do find a balance, and it may not be what you want to look at, but if there's breeding going on and the water's got clarity and the plants are doing fine, don't mess with it. Don't mess with it. Dirted substrate, capped with sand, heavily planted, good stock of fish, algae eaters, in this case the nearite snails, and in this case nearite snails too, also the bush-nosed plecos, because it's a larger tank and they can survive in there, and they're breeding. You've been busy, mister. I'm not going to interfere. I'm just going to leave it be, wait till all the decorating's done, do some maintenance on these tanks. Well, they don't need it per se. However, could do with some trimming of the plants, and it won't hurt. I won't do anything drastic. I won't upset the equilibrium. Oh, and everyone's breeding. That's a good sign. And this is a very old tank, and I hardly ever need to touch it. And you can hear the water flow. The canisters are still working. I don't clean out my canisters. I don't need to. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Is that right, my babies? Is that right, my babies? And the babies. Yeah, that's right. So, no tank maintenance. I was up for it. I've decided against it. Because everyone is fine. Thank you, Sir Father Fish. It does sink in. Eventually. Bless you, dear fellow. Thank you. Bye all.